Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here in this wonderful Wednesday edition of Talk Today, 949-8037 or 949-6990. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Afternoon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. 949-8037, 949-6990. In a bit, we'll get a chance to have a chat with our friends from Hazard Management, CHMCI, as we get a chance to talk about the upcoming hurricane season, or the hurricane season that is in swing as it is. And hopefully, you'll be not only in tune, but informed, and as a result, we can be safe. So sitting with us now in interim is the acting deputy director, right, Mr. Simon Boxall. Hope I got that correct today, sir.
That's it. Yeah, good to see you. I'm glad to be here. And hello, Cayman, and good to see you again.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And
we'll have a couple more staff, I think, coming any minute now too.
All right. Well, it's one of those things, where we don't recognize sometimes how that short, in terms of the relative measured distance between your office and mine, but that can be a long walk, a long green mile, they say.
Yeah, it's a lot going on right now. Busy, but yeah, you're right.
I was interested, and I think sometimes I'm glad for some of my friends who love talking about the weather. They're actually informed. They're knowledgeable to the point where when I get a chance to chat with them, I understand some of the things that I wish when I was in geography way back when that I had paid attention, right?
Things like the wind shear and Sahara dust and all these different things. You sort of
all of these things, right? And what's amazing is that just like some people will follow the stock market, or they'll follow particular companies as maybe they rebrand, or they'll even follow the political sort of movements and the like. Some people are enamored by weather patterns, the change, and it doesn't matter the season. They're almost like armchair storm chasers in a sense. Right? It's incredible.
It is. It's interesting. I mean, people say we don't have seasons in Cayman, but I mean, I always think we have more seasons than anyone,
Crab season, mango season, marble season. We've got a season.
Guineps. So...
All right.
But yeah, I mean, like the last few days we just watched as the beginning of the rainy season coming, the sort of explosion of insect life and crabs and I mean, it's very interesting to see people out there with their crocus sacks picking up the land crabs at this time of year. And
or like in my place, they're raiding my bamboo forest.
Really? They eat the bamboo?
I don't know, boy. People are taking it. Must be the iguana colors. I don't know. But I'm glad that you were able to bring along some of your colleagues as we have a chance to chat. There's a handsome fellow sitting across from me, Simon. Last time I saw him, man, I was taller than he was. He's like, that's not true. I was never taller than him. Come on. I was at one point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. He was 6 months old and I was 50. But that was it. No, well.
I grew up in West Bay, right?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, and they're growing big in West Bay. It's going to be fun. What do you think? They say when free or more best players are graded.
I'm going to use that one actually.
Yeah. Please do.
I already call it the capital.
The capital. Yeah. It is, the de facto informal capital. I can take a lot of grief later on, but that's okay.
Simon's in good company.
Yeah, there you go, man. There you go.
I lived in West Bay for a while.
Yeah, because he's
community spirit neighborhood. It's good.
Secretly, an aspiring West Bay. I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I believe as a caller, yes, they reminded us. Start with loving yourself, then loving your family unit, then loving your community, and then loving your neighborhood, and then let it grow and grow and grow. And as it becomes, if everybody was to embrace that, all of a sudden the 50 billion people that occupy this little space, we're going to be that much more considerate and conscious, whether we're on the roads, whether we're in our neighborhoods and the like. And I was just starting to share with Simon earlier this notion that so many people, we will introduce our guests formally in a second. I'll do it, but maybe as I would ask of you, if it's okay, if you don't feel too uncomfortable, a little bit about yourselves for two reasons. One, our news department, I can say, hey, you've put a little bit better job at sort of sharing us, who your guests are, and then for the listeners to realize that we have some not only committed, competent, but very, very, diligent people who come on our panels for now and again. But as I was considering my thought, the idea that probably, 2019, so in less than a decade, probably 7-8 years, according to some of the estimates, almost 2 billion people are going to be living in areas where there's going to be an issue with water. I mean, significant water, being able to bathe and drink and do their stuff. Was it 8 billion people in the world now? Close to
7 or 8 billion.
Yeah, a quarter of that population is going to be affected by not having sufficient, adequate potable water. That's a significant number.
Yes.
I don't know. I ask you to forgive me, as my friends over at our Met Office do always. When we talk about the weather, I really try to listen, pay attention, understand, and I try to read to get a perspective. But he went to Louisiana State, for instance. So as an alumni, he's in contact, and apparently he got a newsletter some time ago where the professors over there doing some studies relative to the Mississippi and how the delta has been affected, and they're going to do some proposal to maybe fix the Mississippi. Billions and billions of money spent as it is. On one hand, you got economics of the fisheries, the crab, the crawfish, the lobster, whatever, shrimp. How is that going to be affected if they do this because fresh water, salt water? The economics is what I see, the environmental impact that people live in. But in the Cayman context, how are we looking at that relative to our safety? Brings you back to West Bay after Ivan. Where was everybody? Not saying no more than that. Okay. May I, as we start our discussion, introduce properly and respectfully for our listeners, we have from Hazard Management the Acting Deputy Director, Mr. Simon Boxall. And should we say ladies first, or Mr. Lennox, should we start with you? Could I just say just a quick little introduction of yourselves? Ms. Cheyenne, what about you? Would you want to start with you first?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
My name is Cheyenne Powery. I'm the Logistics and Operations Officer over at Hazard Management, and I've been there forever. But one of my primary responsibilities is shelters. So
I like what she said. I've been there forever. Okay, and it's okay if I say Lennox, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Lennox.
In introducing myself, I should explain. My first name formally is Leslie.
Yeah.
And I tend to say that with a little bit of bass so that people understand that I'm a male.
There's no confusion. I mean, in case you were worrying about it, I mean, this guy is what, about 12 feet tall?
Well, 11 feet.
In 13 inches. Okay.
But yes, my name is Leslie Lennox Vernon, and I'm the Assistant Director for Public Safety and Communications, which is known as 911. I've been seconded some months ago to Hazard Management, and I've been there for about 4 to 5 months now, and it has been an absolute joy learning a lot of the operations that they are conducting over there and sort of understanding how 911 fits into the national emergency response picture. So all of the, I guess, ground level stuff, activities and so on that are going on, I'm getting more hands-on and experience and seeing how things unfold. Although I've been introduced to the National Emergency structure previously in my role at 911. I'm understanding what is occurring behind the scenes. So that has been a very, very interesting experience, and I'm learning a lot, and it's very good opportunity.
If it's acceptable at some point, maybe that notion of cross training and being seconded, because, and if I could equally ask not just about the logistics relative to shelter operations, but the idea of 911, to the extent that we are probably now very familiar. Pick up the phone, there is an emergency on our part, we dial 911. It goes to the operator, is that the right word? The telecommunicator.
Yes.
On the other end, trained, very professional, I mean, without any hesitation, reservation, very competently directs you, gets you, and everything goes well. Now, some of us may have been somewhat familiar to the back of the days, probably still the same in the UK, where there are 3 different numbers to dial depending on which emergency service that you need. Mm-hmm. In the US, it's that one number. We may watch American television and 911, what's your emergency? I'm sorry, your cat isn't that important, whatever it is, right? And then the fire officer comes out and he's hulking. Yeah. You know, that's not what we're talking about, more than that. So maybe get that perspective when it comes to, there is a threat because of some national issue relative to an earthquake or hurricane or something else that's threatening us, not just that there was an accident or a fire or something else. Maybe a different sort of level of urgency.
It's a very critical relationship for us, and we saw it both, with the Seoul fire and the tsunami alert we were placed under after the earthquake off Honduras. We've tightened that up, partly with the help of Lennox, to ensure that there's call trees in place. If one person doesn't pick up, what happens next? How do you, and who are you contacting? Who are the kind of response agency for each particular hazard? If it's a hazardous materials incident, if it's an oil spill, if it's a fire, that's a bit more obvious probably for most people. But it's an important relationship, and I don't know whether you want to talk more about it. You're the subject matter expert.
I like that.
Well, just to touch a bit on that, it is a very critical relationship. And I found in the last few months that I've been there alone, quite often I have provided a lot of guidance in terms of understanding or sharing the understanding of how 911 operates and the context of the relationship between notification and so on with the management team over at HMCI. So, for instance, understanding the sequence of events for an emergency call, how it's processed, and how we reach to the point of notification to hazard management. And equally as important, going the opposite direction is sharing that knowledge of how hazard management operates and how they need to be informed and at what point they need to be informed. Again, very, very critical. And I've been, again, lucky to be placed or given that responsibility. And I think so far it is working out very well. In the last few months, we've been doing a lot of new initiatives, and some of those require involvement of other departments, including 911. And again, as we're crafting policies and response plans and that sort of stuff, we are looking at, okay, how does this work best or most efficiently, and considering whether we need to buy equipment or conduct training exercises and so on. And so far, I think it's working extremely well. And when I go back to 911, if I do.
So good, why not stay, right?
Well, a lot of people ask that question, are you going back? Yes, no, maybe so. And to be honest with you, at this point, I'm just enjoying the experience. I've been in 911 for the past 22 years, and that's what I know. I can speak about that all day, every day, because I understand it. Being in this environment, there's a lot of fresh, new concepts. And matter of fact, I've changed a lot of my thought processes from looking from the outside, and now I'm on the inside, and I'm understanding exactly how things are done, and it changes my view. And through that, I can now relate back to the management team at 911 and say, hey, look, you need to change this because of this reason.
Right. It's very much similar, I guess, in a sense, to those old days of where computers were built for the user and not considering what the user needed. So they reversed that and say, okay, what does you need? Let me build it so that you can actually be able to do what is it that we thought you were doing now that we listened to you. When we come back, can we chat more about that? Can we look at shelter ops and the like? And Miss Shan, anytime you wish, if you want us, we can leave Simon and Lennox and we can go for lunch. I mean, Susan is game. No, just kidding.
I'm down for that.
For those who are listening, it is our sincere intent not just to inform and hopefully entertain you somewhat, enlighten you so that you can be absolutely prepared and safe. It is a serious subject. We don't want ever for us to take our preparation for hurricanes or international, sort of disaster lightly. But if we can enjoy our lesson, we might come back for the next day. So when we return, you got a call, you got a question, you got a comment, you got a query. You just want to say hello to Simon because, he's looking dashing today with that red tie. I don't know. He's rocking it. 949-837, 949-6990. Susan reminds me, YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Something about there you can find us streaming live. I feel sorry for you. Dial in. It really came on live stream and you'll see it there. She promised me she'll focus the camera on our guest so you don't have to worry about seeing me. You don't have to worry about hurting your eyes. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes. Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore, RC Fusion featuring Billboard's pop hit songs and more from the 70s to the 90s.
RC Fusion.
Weekdays from 10 a.m. till 12. RC Fusion.
Brought to you by Tasty Patties. Baked fresh every 30 minutes. Available at Tortuga locations, the Patty Express Industrial Park, and Bake It and Take It on Eastern Avenue. Get tasty now.
Across the Caribbean, our competitors have built piers that give cruise ship passengers a better arrival and departure experience. How can we expect to compete if we don't meet passengers' expectations?
Looking forward, looking bright.
Learn more and spread the word.
Support our port, support our tourism.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Have to have a chance to continue our discussion on our continuing preparations relative to the official hurricane season. Is it June the 1st to November 30th, or is it January 1st to December 31st? I'm never quite sure.
No, June 1 till end of November.
But we should be prepared all year round, right?
Yeah, we have multiple hazards, everything.
All right. Simon, Lennox, Cheyenne joins us. Thank you all very much. And I hopefully, you feel comfortable, and hopefully the public listening. I find sometimes we hear things and, I heard that already. And yeah, we know it. And thankfully we do. But we don't become complacent. We don't be too dismissive in a sense. And we do what we're supposed to do because we know it and we're prepared. And then we're able to help others because we've already taken care of other things. Whether it's a elderly family member, whether it's a new neighbor to the community, whatever the reason is, things happen. Now, Simon, as we continue our discussion, looking at this idea of the hurricane season, sort of officially, June 1st, November 30th, that's when determined that's the season. But we saw 2004-05, we saw just the other day, things can happen outside of the season, before or after.
That's right. I think 4 out of the last 5 years we've had a storm before the start of June 1, official start.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know whether that's changing climate stuff, and some of them are running past the end of the season too. We're seeing that more and more as well.
Well, see, last night when I was on stage, because my other night job is stand-up comedy. No, that's not true. I said, hey, what it is? We changed hurricane season because we changed the political season. No, just kidding. That was not. Come on, Cheyenne, get you there. All right. Shelters, when we think of it, we look at our population, we look at, thankfully, the resilience of our buildings, commercial and residential. Most of us probably live in homes where we feel, relatively speaking, comfortable that we could probably stay there if the weather system isn't going to be any more than this. Those in lower lying areas probably will very, wisely, let me relocate, go to a shelter, go elsewhere. But from the perspective of moving people, for those who consider shelters, what sort of advice, guidance, what would you like to share with us, Mom?
Well, what we recommend, if you feel that you're vulnerable, your home is vulnerable, and we recommend that you make provisions before, know the nearest shelter, and make arrangements to get there. It is, at the moment, first come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, you can't reserve a spot. So you want to make that plan beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thanks for doing that, because I was just thinking, people saying, well, I live in this area, I don't feel comfortable, whatever the reason is in this house. So the shelter is quarter mile down the road, or it may be, 2 steps next door, for argument's sake. You can't make a reservation like you can at a hotel and I want to go there. You need to be prepared and move
quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, and spaces are limited, so.
Kind of like in heaven. No, just kidding. Sorry. No, so spaces are limited. You can't make a reservation. And when you go, what sort of considerations are there? I mean, what do you bring? What do you not bring? Take chocolate for sure. But other than that, what else do you? What would be the things that people should understand are important when they go into a shelter?
Well, again, space is limited, so we don't expect you to bring your home. But what we recommend is a 3-day supply of essential goods. So you want to bring water, food, clothing for 3 days.
Okay.
Medication, any essential.
Okay, and bring your passport and the good identification.
You will.
Okay.
You will need that to actually register into the shelter.
Okay. And I want, if it's okay, ask about the sort of that registration process. And we understand why it is, but maybe so that people appreciate it. But in the sense of what you bring, toiletries, do you bring your toothpaste, your toilet paper? Do you bring those things as well, or are they there? I mean, it's not...
Well, we would recommend that you bring yours. We want...
You want to share with me?
We want you to be self-sustained while you're there. But we do have some supplies that we will be able to help you out with if in the event that you run out.
I think too, as I listen to what Ms. Power is sharing, the notion that you come into this shelter, you want to be as self-sufficient. You want to be able to sort of maintain your...
Provide for yours. Yes, correct.
And it's you, maybe, your spouse, your children, whatever the case is. Everybody has, the unit, right? Simon?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And bring along stuff for the kids as well. And they're probably going to ask you when you register. I think, Shai, it's correct that they ask you if you've got, some special skills, if you're a nurse or, a counselor or whatever. And you may actually be asked to help, maybe with a little bit of the cleaning or something at the shelter.
Yeah, pay for your keep. No, just kidding. No, but all hands on deck.
Please, I mean, people sometimes do rock up with like 3 big suitcases and things like that. I mean, we do have pretty short supply of
space.
Do you want to make the announcement? I know it's not completely done and dusted, but a big story with the shelters, Shai, about our 4-legged friends and things.
Oh,
I was going to get to that. I was going to ask you, but thank you. We're hit that breaking news. Yeah.
My old days as a journalist, so sometimes end up asking.
You want to lead? Okay, I don't bear to lead, but okay.
Okay, yes.
So we have special. This is the first time that we're going to be able to make accommodations for.
Yes, I guess it's breaking news. 2 of our shelters, the Clifton Hunter High School Hall Gymnasium in Northside, and John Gray High School Gymnasium in Georgetown will be animal friendly. So you'll be able to bring your animals there. Animals meaning at the moment, we're only accepting cats and dogs.
Okay.
They will have to come with their cages, and it will be separated from the human population. Would I say? Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two, but sorry, I shouldn't have said.
You can visit them though.
But you have to come with your it's not a drop off. You have to come.
You have to
the shelter with the animal, you and your pet.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
But it would be a separation in between both the furry friends and the human population.
I think Simon, after some of us a few days not shaving, we'll be the furry friends as well.
We'll put him in a cage.
Steel cage box.
Beginning of hurricane season, all this media is forming my knees.
Yeah. Now, when we look at this idea of the shelters with the pets and the like, just for emphasis, you have, as you shared, you come. It's not a drop off. Come, stay with your pet. You and the pet will be boarded. Cats and dogs now. Mm-hmm. Any restrictions on size of the dog, or the type of dog specifically? Or if it's your pet and it's the family pet, bring it along. Bring the cage and the like.
Well, we're still working out the policies behind behind the shelter. So it in the near future, we will send out information about the shelter and what the requirements are. But at the moment, our thought process is that that it's no size limit. Mm-hmm. Once it's caged and it can be stored, we will accept. But again, we're working with the agriculture department to put together policies and determine exactly what. Right. What is
again,
what.
This is part of that preparation, because some of us would probably have a passport for our pet. We have a cage, and the pet travels with us. I think there was a time when the pet was in with the suitcases. Now it can be in the cab with us. But there are some of us who have a pet. It has its own room, bathroom, stays in the house, and the like. But there's no cage. That is one of the things we would have to probably get to make sure if we're going to, go to the shelter. It's not just an expense; it's a consideration.
Yeah, and we have been talking to the agriculture department about that, and they have some experience in setting up animal shelters, and they have advised us that each animal would even need to be chipped so that we can identify them.
There's a lot of considerations.
It's all sorts of considerations.
Let's ask of you then, as the policies, but it's something for us to be cognizant of coming down. It'll shortly be properly structured and like. But for us now, who are going to the shelters, there's a registration process. We need to bring our identification, which is good to have in a way so that we can, keep that secure as well as we're secure. We go to a hotel, we go to a conference, we have to register, we present certain things, and there's information that's taken. We come to the shelter. What is that registration? I can imagine it. You walk up to the nice concierge. There's a desk there. There's fresh, warm, baked chocolate chip cookies, and you're being processed. No.
If I may jump in here, we've had a number of meetings with regard to pet shelters and such, and there is I guess a pre-registration things that you would have to do. So Cheyenne mentioned chipping your pet and so on, but in terms of shots and so on. So as soon as we can, we're going to try to publish those or that information on our website, so people don't just show up with their pet and say, "Hey, I'm here to shelter for the storm." There's a sequence or series of events that would occur before bringing that pet to ensure that there's no pass on of any type of disease or whatever to other pets in the shelter.
Can I also just add, thanks for that. That in the States there are issues with migrants coming across the border and things like that, and the shelters. Some people might not show up to the shelters if they're here illegally or whatever. So if they're worrying about the registration process, they're not going to get turned into the authorities if somehow they ended up in Cayman, under I don't know, different circumstances. And
I like the word you use, different circumstances. I like that. See, West, we have issues with legals. I just
I mean, it's a kind of a touchy subject, but I mean, definitely possibly a vulnerable subgroup, maybe people who are here.
Safety is first.
Safety is first. So in these sort of emergency situations like that, you can feel kind of rest assured that, you're not gonna, if we take the registration details, it's not that hazard management's gonna turn you into the authorities.
Well, I appreciate that, because I was going to, and I appreciate Lennox for sharing that. With respect to the pet, as we understand it, there are things you can do beforehand, and you should have to do, possibly chip in the shots, get in the cage, just to treat quickly, to help with the pre-registration. For the individual who's going to go to the shelter, that person can't pre-register, that person can't make a reservation, but yet you can, part of your preparation as you get in your foods and the other items to take with you during the hurricane, sort of you weather in the storm, you do that for the pet. But when you come to the shelter to register, name, address, occupation, where you're from, where you live in, not too much information other than that.
Yeah, it's just basic information, and what we want to do is kind of keep track of the population within the shelter, coming and going. That's basically what the registration process is for.
And it's for safety.
Safety.
I mean, think of us in our own organizations that have plans. We assemble at a certain area. There's somebody who has been designated to do a head count. George is here, Susan, Peter, Mike. Okay, everybody's here. But no, Mark is out on vacation. This one is seconded to the camera back office, just to be able to count to make sure everybody is where they are, so that nobody's left in the building or the lake.
Yeah, it's basically that's exactly what the registration process is for. We just want to know who's in and who's out.
And also, I think there's special skills. I mean, we've had previous incidents in shelters where the roofs partially come off or collapsed, and people have been able to, with construction skills, have been able to, shore up an area or advise people that maybe that's structurally not, sound, so get people moved away and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, Simon, guide me if this is an irresponsible statement. You tell me. But this is why I think one of the reasons the certs, I'm so taken with them, because if in the community, not only your neighbors, but that the neighbor down the road, he's a nurse, she's a construction manager, she's an engineer, this one is particularly good at electrical. You know in your neighborhood the skill sets that are there. If those people are available, even if it's not a national sort of disaster, as it were, you can draw on that skill set. In the shelter, you imagine you got people in there with these, skills. You can utilize them when needed.
Absolutely. I mean, people might have a heart attack if you can do first aid or CPR. I mean, that's a big skill to have. I mean, we do have first aiders on hand, but it's a kind of a strange environment, and when you're sort of locked down and wind's blowing 150 miles an hour, and so it's possible that you could be called on to assist and help and keep people safe, support people.
Yeah, almost like all hands on deck. So.
Something your colleague referenced the last time too, that I feel as I was thinking about after our discussion. Hopefully, I didn't sort of gloss over it. The idea that the mental, psychological impact of what we endure during the storm. Maybe some people are in this space and they can't see out how that could be affecting them. Perhaps after they're concerned about, what is it out there? Having people inside the shelters who could offer a little bit of counseling and the like. When we come back from the break, as we talk about our shelters, could we also ask, because there is a difference between the regular shelter and then the emergency medical shelters as well. Mr. Lennox, maybe ask of you expertise and input more relative to the planning, the logistics, the preparation, so when you come into sort of the coin that you sit on now. All right. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
It's time to stop giving dads tools and ties for Father's Day. Dads want to relax just as much as you. Get the ultimate chillaxing beach kit for Father's Day at Savannah Pharmacy. Beach shorts, shirts, flip-flops, water shoes, goggles, towels, and sunblock. Let Dad kick back and relax this Father's Day. Gift baskets, including domino sets, coffee mugs, and so much more, are also available. Get all of your Father's Day purchases at Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village or call 946-3336.
I love my daddy. Yes, sirree.
Stay up to date with the latest in healthy living and fitness trends every Saturday morning at 9:30 and Wednesday at 7 p.m. For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Most clinics in the United States, they kind of like one surgery fits all. You're saying, that's not necessary. That's not going to be the case with me. And that's good to hear.
For the Health of It is proudly brought to you by GNC. Join the GNC community and take advantage of their discount days. The first 7 business days of every month and every Wednesday. GNC. Believe in the power of nutrition.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
Headlines.
All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go, Puritan Cleaners.
Meet the world with Puritan professional launderers and dry cleaners. Call 949-7104 for opening hours at Puritan's Countryside Savannah, Elgin Avenue besides Off the Peg, and 337 Eastern Avenue. Drive through, rain or shine. Ask about Puritan's ongoing discounts, plus free pickup and delivery. Call 949-7104. Puritan's 949-7104.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we talk about our preparations for specifically the hurricane season, but also as we look at, not any sort of national disaster, any sort of natural disaster, any issue. It could be, some fire or otherwise, some chemical spill, something else that happens. And we may have adequate warning, like an impending hurricane, or it could be, as I gather, an earthquake. It just comes. Nobody really is aware of it. Simon, is that how it is? Or can we predict earthquakes as we can hurricanes now?
There are people in California that are looking at sort of mini stress in the ground and things like that, and minute movements of the earth, but we don't have that kind of technology here. But yeah, it's an important point because of shelters are really there for all year long, and they could be there and open for extended periods of time. So. We've just recently gone through shelter training for 140 new volunteers. We've got 100 established shelter managers trained, and I think soon they'll be doing the assignments. And this year, I think we're going to be actually taking some of the shelter staff to the shelter that they're going to be assigned to. But we see planes going over us from South America. I carry this duty officer phone around a lot. I have for about 11 years, sort of been on call nights, weekends, and public holidays, apart from a couple of months.
You managed to charge it in those 11 years, because he's like.
But it's kind of it feels kind of at any point really something could potentially happen. You don't want to live in paranoia and fear. You've got to be able to get out and go fishing and stuff occasionally, but. We're living in a different time. It just feels like at any point that there's a possibility for something, so we've got to be prepared and we've got to be ready, and we plan for it and we train for it, we exercise for it, and we have great staff at hazard management and lots of amazing volunteers. So, the mechanism I think is pretty robust.
All right, so Simon Boxall together with Cheyenne Purry and Lennox Vernon, as you guys share with us. If I may ask, though, shelters, and we referenced just prior to the break the idea of the emergency medical shelters, centers. how many shelters we have, capacity, where, and the like. Is that something that we can get to at some point? And I think it's probably good for us to, even if we don't think about going to a shelter, to actually know where they are, how to get to them. Well, Mr. Lennox, we kick it to you. I mean, this ball is being passed to you. Set you up for the score.
Thank you very much for the assist, Miss Powery. So, we have capacity to shelter approximately 5 to 7% of the population. So we just want to let the public know that, and there are various shelters around or within each district. In Georgetown, for example, we have 5 shelters with a capacity of 3,120 across them. But in totality, we have, I think it's somewhere between, what is the figure?
Actually, I had it on my desk earlier as well. I lent you my glasses, but I don't have them. So as we look at this whole idea of shelter management and the notion that as you prepare for a hurricane season, understanding the importance of knowing where our shelters are. I think they're almost one at least in every district. I gather. Well, we talk about some of the private sort of buildings that may allow their employees to shelter there, because our construction standards are very, very robust. I mean, we must, compliment not just the building code, but the contractors, architects and engineers, ensuring that we have very, very structurally sound buildings.
Well, if I may sidetrack a little bit from that, I mean, we have 2 different types of shelters, or 3, if you consider emergency medical shelters or emergency medical centers. The emergency medical centers are staffed with medical staff, obviously, and we urge the public to identify those shelters if they require medical attention or needs, around the clock or otherwise. But having those shelters as part of your plan B. Yes, we talk about how robust our building code is, and people may feel, hey, I built my house in the last 5 years. I have met the code entirely. I've put in extra hurricane straps or whatever the case is. But and from that point of view, a lot of people use Hurricane Ivan as a benchmark. And as Simon always say, including the director, you can't use Hurricane Ivan as your benchmark, because we could have stronger storms. We could have, and we also speak about the category of the storms, which is measured in terms of wind speed, but we have storm surge, which is very, very significant. And Simon has been driving that home all year long. But identifying the shelter that is nearest to you and that it's appropriately fits your needs, as in emergency medical shelter. But you also have Class B shelters that could be used if we need shelter space after the fact, or for different types of events and so on. But we tend to stick to or pay attention to Class A shelters, which are the ones that we use for any type of activation. So,
if I may ask before you jump in there, with respect to the emergency medical centers, presumably that would probably cater or intend to cater to those people who may either need presently, if they're going to be sheltered because of their medical situation, need to go to a facility like that in order to get the attention that they would require, or be someone who's been injured, perhaps just prior or during the storm, they would have to go there so they can get the attention if they're not able to get into the medical facility. Would be the instance for the medical centers?
Correct. The emergency medical centers are staffed with doctors and nurses from the HSA, and the idea behind it is if you think that you would need medical attention, to actually go there. I know maybe Simon might want to touch a little bit more on that. I know that if it's a serious condition, you would actually be required to go to the HSA, the hospital itself. But if it's minor and you might need certain attention, maybe medications. You would make your way to the EMC.
Okay. Well, Sam, if I may ask, after we come back from headline news here, maybe talk a little bit more so that people can appreciate in identifying those in particular. They may have someone at home who is, going to be sheltered doing. What do they need to do? How do they go about it? Where do they go and the like? We can do that right after the break. All right. Well, thank you for listening. We ask you to be informed and stay tuned. When we come back, join us again for more Talk Today.
Community radio with a different appeal. The voice of the people. Security through adversity.
Stuck on you.
Radio for all time.
You're listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
The 2019 Cayman Islands Invitational Under-15 Youth Football Cup kicked off with 4 exciting matches on Tuesday. Portmore United defeated Cayman Islands 1-0. DC United topped Cuba 3-1. Mount Pleasant defeated Cavalier FC 2-0. And CD Victoria beat Tobago All-Stars 1-0. Games continue at the Edbush Playing Field in West Bay and the Cayman Brack Sports Field at 6:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. respectively. Admission is free. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. 2 international groups trying to foster a solution to the political and humanitarian crisis in Venezuela wants to get participation in the effort from countries that are supporting embattled President Nicolas Maduro. The Lima Group and some international contact group members consider opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido to be Venezuela's rightful leader, arguing that Maduro's re-election a year ago was illegitimate because strong opponents were barred from running. 8 Egyptian police officers have been killed in a militant attack on a checkpoint in the northern Sinai Peninsula, the Interior Ministry has said. 5 militants were also killed in the ensuing exchange of fire, while others escaped and were being pursued by security forces. The attack took place west of the city of El Arish as local people see the festival of Eid al-Fitr. And Miley Cyrus has responded angrily online after apparently being grabbed by a stranger in Barcelona. The singer, writing on Twitter, said she can't be grabbed without her consent. A video posted online appears to show a fan grabbing the singer by the neck before trying to kiss her. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we continue, making sure that we're prepared and safe during the hurricane season in particular, if I may, out of a great sense of respect, say thanks to all of the volunteers, all those individuals who truly go above and beyond their own jobs, but get trained in their communities to assist in the shelters, to serve in the CERTs or any other capacity, because it is an incredible undertaking. From hazard management, we have Mr. Simon Boxall together with his colleagues, Ms. Shan Power and Mr. Lennox Vernon. I don't think that we can talk about it enough. I think back to the sort of the days prior to hazard management, where we had the National Hurricane Committee, the meetings that we would have, the leadership that we had, the people in the communities who did, what they did. Now the formalized structure and the notion that Simon has shared. It's not just a hurricane. It could be some other issue affecting us. It could be, an earthquake, and we've seen those. Yep. A lot of good stuff, Michelle?
Good stuff.
Yeah, the volunteers, it's amazing when you go along to the shelter training, seeing, 140 people, a lot of people from Red Cross and ADRA, and we should mention too, the other agencies that are involved. It's not just hazard management, it's Children and Family Services and Department of Environmental Health and the Police Department, Health Services Authority, and so much goes into it.
Public Works,
right? Getting them, the generators, make sure they're working, the shutters go up, and the cisterns are filled with water.
That is something that, sorry, as you were sharing, Simon, Lennox referenced earlier. I always get this one. The Department of Public Safety is what's the 911, the former title of it? Public Safety, right?
So it's the Department of Public Safety Communications.
Communications. That's the SC word that I missed there.
Yes. Typically, I'll put in parentheses on the N911 so that people would understand. But the reason for that is because the department is sort of split into two sections now, and we're hoping to add, more components to that.
Right. And I appreciate that. And that's what I was saying when I was thinking of public safety, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, you're moving out and about. There are things that are happening. Let's say it's the aftermath of a hurricane and there are down power lines. There are still some winds, but it's not a hurricane. People can still be affected by things. There may be debris in the roads. People need to get, because of their sort of requirements, get back to duty. How do they safely move about?
Can I jump in on that? Because it's an important one. I think people want to get out of the shelters as soon as the sort of wind dies down. And, there's going to be a period where there's going to be road clearance happening, ambulance is running. And so if people can be patient, give a few hours just to get things sorted out, that's going to be really important. And then we see the wind drop down in East End, and maybe it's still blowing in West Bay or whatever. So,
and that's it. And thank you for that, because I was thinking that there are those of us who, because of the work, we're being called in to get the roads clear, to get things happening. And then there are those of us, because of our nature, we're just impatient. I got to get out of the shelter. I need to go check on my whatever that thing is, right? Sure. But if we don't do it in a coordinated effort to ensure public safety, then it could be chaotic and it could be, harmful. And then more calls into 911, and then what otherwise could have been a relatively easier exercise of getting back a semblance of normalcy is now compounded because of, people's dispositions, right? Mr. Lennox?
Well, speaking of safety, I just wanted to touch on what Simon mentioned, is waiting on that all clear and having a national structure in place. Although the operations center might be here at the government administration building, we have resource personnel all scattered across the island. So we are listening back to these people coming back and saying, hey, everything is good here, the winds have died down, we are safe, and then having some coordination and communication with the weather service and so on. So, don't take it upon yourself to venture outside when you think it's safe. Wait for that all clear, because there's a lot of information being considered to decide when that all clear actually is delivered to the public.
If we could ask, and only so that it's informative, if it's not timely, then don't have a response. We know of the coordination, we referenced it earlier, between the multiple different agencies and even some of the private sector entities that may come on board, but specifically the official government agencies, that coordination to ensure public safety. But the communication, for instance, we saw after the hurricane, let's go back to December of 2004 with the earthquake. The cell towers for a while were knocked out and people couldn't get through. They were so used to it. During the hurricane, there was intermittent coverage to some extent. The ability for the official agencies to communicate, to make sure, and there's a resiliency and a redundancy within the systems to ensure that so even us as a public who may not be able to call a next door neighbor to find out something, there's still a fair degree of confidence that official communication is taking place across the districts, across the islands.
Well, if I may, there's significant amount of work that has gone into creating redundancy / resiliency in the various communication methods. For instance, 911, just about 3 to 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken with the time frame, we have reached out to all of the telephone operators or providers and said, hey, we need to build in some redundancy in terms of if one provider fails, they need to have some type of redundancy that will deliver 911 emergency calls to that operator, and he or she has the ability to communicate that out to the public safety officials or responders. And then even from that point of view, our radio system has redundancy built into it as well. So it's a constant discussion year in, year out. Even HMCI does the same thing. We are embarking on a number of new initiatives this year. And in those mechanisms, we are looking at creating redundancies, whether it's computer infrastructure or, looking into, for example, looking into ham radio operators and seeing how we could bring them into the loop if something should occur, and getting that word out to the masses, if you must.
I think too, Sam, as I listen, recognizing that in this era of technology, everything is based on a system that if somebody doesn't switch on the outlet or whatever it is, nothing works, right? We're not so dependent on that we're not able to function, but to an extent there is,
Exactly, and we got a plan for situations without power, without internet. We fall back in the old days, Meg, pen and piece of paper if we have to. Pigeons.
You use them every day, man.
But that ultra-high frequency government radio network that Lennox just referenced, the Motorola system, is pretty robust and resilient, and we've hardened the area in Cayman Brac where it failed, where it comes ashore. There was a bit of it still up on poles, but that's now been buried underground. So we've been looking at mechanisms, strategies to make it more robust. We've got a new tower now in West Bay, which is really strong.
Strong tower in West Bay, why?
It's strong tower in West Bay. So I mean, we are strongly we're confident that we're going to keep some form of communication up and running, and we're not going to, no matter what nature throws at us, pretty much we're confident we'll be able to communicate in some way, I think.
Yeah. I think this is where even from the outside, just a glimpse, I recognize that the country has done well in sort of that infrastructure investment, and to be able to respond, and hopefully not just respond, but to be proactive beforehand, getting the information out. I'm thinking back too that some of us may have access. Ivan, for instance, some of us could still access a network or two, communicate with friends and family outside. So hopefully, as we build into our system this messaging that we're doing, that we're on the same page. Not that it's a propaganda machine, but it's about safety and security, and ensuring that the information internally as well as to the external world is one that is legit.
Yeah, I mean, we have the Joint Communications Service to ensure unified communications in the aftermath. But even with the third teams, we distribute the VHF radios like people use on the boats and things like that, and that's pretty much a line of sight. So there will be some sort of communication. I mean,
Now, as I listen, are there things that we, as the general populace, because I think some of us still, unfortunately, whether it's because we've been here forever and it's no big deal. I mean, look at Ivan. We survived that. We become complacent. Or we're relatively new and we're still in that, we're in paradise. We're not serious enough about what this thing could be. And then if it happens, we then become so, how you say, discombobulated in a sense. Are there things we can do to make sure that we're not, too foolish about our approach and preparation?
Yeah, I think we were all pretty surprised by what Ivan did, when seeing our cars floating off. And they were surprised in New Orleans when Katrina came ashore. And I mean, we can see some of the possibilities when they run the models, and we are aware that, we can get a substantially higher surge, and that's kind of a frightening thought. We look at these worst case scenarios. We don't want to fearmonger, but I think a lot of people are stuck on the Ivan experience and thinking that's all we can expect. That's the worst it could be. But unfortunately, it isn't. So I think we're lucky we have a great National Weather Service, and hopefully with our mitigation officer, we're trying to develop systems where we can give more accurate estimations of storm surge prior to impact, maybe even eventually provide maps showing people, and that would be useful if we were issuing evacuation orders in advance of an impact. So, with radar, with satellites, with everything that we've got, all the technology, I still think that we're vulnerable, and we're so low-lying at the end of the day that it's just, where we're located geographically, we're vulnerable to earthquakes, tsunamis, we're very coastal, so we're vulnerable to wave impacts. I just think that taking a little bit of time to prepare, and I don't know how to really prompt people to just kind of get past that sort of lethargy.
That's the word. I think as one final break, is that what Ms. Susan's reminded me? Before we go to that break in this last segment here, the idea that
to add to what Simon said, I think to prevent you from being overwhelmed, the key is to prepare, to plan. Think about things beforehand and make plans, put plans in place to ensure that the impact is less.
Don't wait for the last minute. If you're going to go to a shelter, go before, the hurricane's upon you. Well, all right, when we come back from the break, you can share with us other thoughts on it, and hopefully we'll keep this discussion going and people will not become this sort of complacent and have that level of apathy. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Flow, we know that 4 are better than 1. Introducing Flow Quad Play. Packed with the fastest, most reliable broadband, the power and control of Flow Evo TV, Cayman's best mobile experience, and tons of home phone minutes, all in one convenient package from only $199 a month. With 4 plans to choose from, you're sure to find one that fits your needs. It's value, ease, and convenience all on one bill with Cayman's #1 network. Find out why 4 are better than 1 with Flow Quad Play at discoverflow.ky. Terms and conditions apply.
Healthcare Pharmacy, caring about your health for the past 25 years. Radio Cayman's premier health show.
Alzheimer's and dementia, are they the same disorder?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Is heard on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Brought to you by Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor, where they care about your health. Transfer and refill your prescription online. Visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or call 947-8900. Healthcare Pharmacy, now with a new and second location in Governor's Square. The new Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor's Square is open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Healthcare Pharmacy, where they care about your health.
June 26 is International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Statistics show that positive parenting prevents drug use and other risky behaviors. So parents, on this day and every day, continue to build a strong bond between you and your children and show them that you care. This message is brought to you by the National Drug Council and Radio Cayman.
It's time to stop giving dads tools and ties for Father's Day. Dads want to relax just as much as you. Get the ultimate chillaxing beach kit for Father's Day at Savannah Pharmacy. Beach shorts, shirts, flip-flops, water shoes, goggles, towels, and sunblock. Let Dad kick back and relax this Father's Day. Gift baskets, including domino sets, coffee mugs, and so much more, are also available. Get all of your Father's Day purchases at Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village or call 946-3336.
I love my daddy, yes sirree.
At Powerhouse Gym, where you feel like home in a multicultural energy environment for all. They are dedicated to helping you achieve your fitness goals. Whether you have decided to get in shape, train for a specific sport, boost your energy levels, or even look your best for a special day. With a variety of sports options, group fitness classes, CrossFit outdoor gym, they provide personal trainers and equipment. Powerhouse Gym, King Sports Center, offers a complete health and recreational environment for the only sports and recreational facility of its kind in the Cayman Islands. For more information, call 946-5464. Email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. Powerhouse Gym, King Sports Center. Serious results, period.
Talk today. but I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us. And with the greatest of respect, I really appreciate you taking a couple minutes. And even if you're listening fully attentive, as I hope that and pray that we are, or if you're listening, as I say, with a half an ear, it isn't that we believe that this subject has been exhausted. I think on a personal level, we can never be too prepared for a hurricane. And even if it's just a strong gust of wind that knocks over, your potted plants, you know what, that can cause damage in and of itself that you could otherwise avoid if you had just taken a second and put it inside somewhere. But it may not even be that. It may be even more significant. So, my Cheyenne, to you, Simon and Lennox, thanks very much for joining us. And to the public for being prepared. I mean, hurricane shelters is one thing, but that's not just the only thing. Yeah. Right, Simon?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. And yeah, I think we do have a really prepared population. Mm-hmm. I think people take it seriously. And I hope we're not boring them by coming on. We think it's important. I mean, there are a lot of people that were pretty young when the last big experience happened, and there are new people to the island who maybe are.
When you said new experience, you mean the last election? To get people to think, no, you mean Hurricane Ivan.
Yeah.
Sounds like, boy. People listening, why are you talking about politics? No, people were young, but it's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think if maybe one or two things we say ends up kind of, helping somebody, or maybe the information, some of the listeners can pass it on to new people that are on the island, visitors, new residents or whatever. Or I think it'll make a difference. And we see, how quickly people rush to the supermarkets and things. So I think people are aware that it's a possibility that they could be looking at extended interruptions and things like that. So,
and it is even to know what to sort of get in your go bag, as it were. You're going to need to have your hurricane supplies. What do you put into it? And some people don't even appreciate the challenges of that alone, right, Simon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it does take a little bit of planning and thought, and we have a list on our website. You don't have to get every single thing. Some people who've got maybe young children, their kid is going to be different from mine and Lennox's. Maybe they got to pack diapers and but different things for different people that need to go into their kit. And at the end of the day, the food and water is obviously vital. Non-perishable food, things like garbage bags to wrap up things, and a lot of people lost important documents, photographs, things like that. Most of our photographs are now backed up onto the cloud or whatever, but crazy times. But,
the last time I was in cloud, it was a lot of lightning. Sorry. It's a different cloud.
Yeah, we have a list on www.caymanprepared.ky, or if you're not into the internet stuff, come along to the government building. We're on the 4th floor. We'll welcome you. We'd be happy to see you if it's not me or Lennox Cheyenne. And we have brochures actually in the lobby too of the government building, and a number of good supplements were put out by there's in Foster supermarkets, and also the Compass put out a pretty good supplement as well. So,
if I may ask you, a message came through earlier, and I do apologize. I should have asked you during the break in terms of preparing for it and having this thing, and you talked about sometimes the dietary concerns of people because of a medical condition, perhaps food allergies, even religious considerations. We have a fairly good selection of things in our supermarkets for the change in populace, but during when you're preparing for a hurricane, you need to consider those things. Will you be able to get those things? Will they last during? How perishable are those? So make sure that you have that for that child or that adult who has a dietary consideration.
Yeah, and the elderly and things like that. I mean, as we age, our sight gets worse. Our sense of smell, and things perish. In fact, Tanya Foster helped put together like a whole. It's on our website. List of sort of hurricane cooking things, recipes. But thinking through what your elderly or even your pet or your little children, it's all part of the planning process. But the elderly, especially in the aftermath, they trying to drag around a bag of ice and get around. It can be difficult putting up shutters, so keep an eye out for them. Look out.
So we say it's port neat. Don't bother.
And I want to add to Simon. It's a rule, a shelter rule. It's no open flames. So food that you bring to the shelter has to be ready to eat. So no hot plates. That should not be a part of your kit.
I'm just thinking, all flames are good, but no open flames. Oh my God. I can see Susan laugh, by the way. I missed that.
So please, when you are considering foods to put into your kit, ensure that they are ready to eat.
They're not meant to bring knives, but how you chop things up, I guess, just not really pointed.
Oh, yeah. What about that? Yeah, knives. I mean, you cut cutlery and, what do you do with that?
I guess just not really pointed.
Not pointed, not.
So my chef's knife wouldn't be able to come with me?
No. We would consider that a weapon.
Oh, yeah. We've weaponized so many things in this country. Oh, my goodness. Jeez.
My lunch with my machete.
I should be my pen home. Oh, but no, but I guess
think butter knife will be fine.
Butter knife.
But your fishing knife, I don't think we'll allow that to come into the shelter.
Back in the day, man, you had a pocket knife on you, you were good. Nowadays, it's you know what? Maybe I'll have that public discussion at another point. But again, it's little things that add to the sort of considerations for others. Now, hopefully, we'll see. Simon? I'll leave it to you, man. You're a diplomat.
Yeah. I think people normally use a lot of common sense, but we're taking things seriously now. Shelter staff we do background checks. There's a child protection officer in every shelter.
Yeah.
We are evolving. We're trying to sort of keep up and make sure people are safe. And there are police officers there. They're not going to be sort of on top of people, but they're ensuring that there's sort of order takes place, that other people's safety is respected, and there's a lot goes into that.
In closing, at the shelters, if I may ask of you, it may seem obvious, or it may even be foolish, but as you if you're a person like to read, bring a book just to occupy your mind and your time. Your child, bring that thing that is, I don't know, sentimental or particular to the child, the little toy or whichever, but even bring little games that aren't, don't bring the full, sort of poker table, but bring something that can engage you somewhat and help you to pass the time.
Correct. On our website, and I would encourage the listeners to visit our website, because we have the 2019 approved shelter list there as well. So we want you guys to know your nearest shelter. So go ahead. We encourage you to look. But the list is there as well. The
sort of things you take along.
Yeah, the recommended kit, I guess we would say. And that we do encourage you to bring along entertainment, both for yourself and your kids if you do.
KManPrepared.ky, Simon? Is that the website?
And we have Facebook at Kman Has It, if you want to check. And you can follow us, because we'll be putting out the messages and stuff if there are threats out there, or if there's in the aftermath where you can go and get water and food, and the relief centres will we depend very heavily on Radio Kman. That's normally our first point for getting information to the public. But
thank God for His mercy in the country, and the Radio Kman when they built this is a bunker.
Yeah, and people listened. I mean, in the aftermath, you guys were up pretty quick, and people were ready for.
It's not what cracks a loud bit, boy. But
another opportunity for learning or being aware of what you can do for yourself and your family and others and such is just being aware. But the department does go out and do a lot of presentations as well. We've conducted quite a bit of those since I've been there. This month we've gone out to the local hardware stores and so on, and we've really been pushing this family planning or family plan. It's a document where we've handed out to a number of residents, and it's just getting people in the thought process of, giving some consideration to what would I do. Because, as we mentioned earlier, my plan is going to be different from his plan. I live in a completely different area. We may be in the same district, but, my mode of, transportation might be different from his, and that grab-and-go bag might be much larger, smaller, whatever the case is. But just think about what you would do. And it's not just hurricanes. It's all hazards you're thinking of in a fire. Everyone may, leave the house through a different window or opening. Where do you meet after that to go through a head count to determine that everybody's safe so you can report to your emergency responders and so on? So it's just getting the population into the mindset of, walking through the motions, considering what your options are. And the beauty of it is you can change it, as the year or as your circumstance changed. This year you had 5. Next year you might have 10 people in your household. So the dynamic may change. Someone may become chronically ill or something like that. So everything changes, but it's just being aware and giving it some thought. And it doesn't take long.
Right. That's why I'm glad that you are willing to come on as often as you're, done so far, because things and circumstances change. New family come, perhaps additions to the family, perhaps changes in the family circumstance, medical, financial, and otherwise. Things are happening. We need to be responsive, and hopefully, if we're responsible, we'll be informed. Mr. Simon?
Yeah, that's right, and hopefully we'll, in addition to being informed, we'll be safe.
Yep.
So, take a little bit of time and just think it through. Those family plans, again, we should probably make those available on the ground floor of the government building too.
Yes.
And Lennox has been incredible. We've been focusing on the elderly quite a lot recently, and he's been assisting, almost leading the presentations. They love listening to you, Lennox.
These grey hairs aren't for nothing.
You really identify. Call us if you want us to come give a presentation to your church or to your business or to your school or anything else. And we've been doing continuity of operations plans. Cheyenne was really helpful, and both of you actually looking at how businesses can make it through, because those that plan obviously are more likely to be back up and running quickly and will outcompete their competition and hopefully withstand an impact and so on.
Hopefully we'll continue to be in prayer for not just the country, that we don't have any hurricanes or earthquakes or any other natural occurring disaster, but for the region as well. And as the season goes on, Simon, please accept the public invite to come in, even for a few minutes or even by a telephone, just to update, just to inform, just to remind people, so that we don't become another 6 months of this. Let's keep it in the 4. And thank you all again, seriously, very, very much. If you can keep my attention when you talk about the weather, that's not too bad. All right. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and may the rest of the week and every day end in a way, if you speak English, to be a good day. To our listeners, when we return, Dr. Courtney Cummings will join us. He'll talk about strokes, and he'll give us some tips and trips and some awareness. Hopefully, as he brings along some of his students with him, we'll have a chance to learn some more. So please join us when we return.
Support our port, support our tourism.
Did you know Georgetown's revitalization goes hand in hand with a new cruise terminal? The project will create jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities for Caymanians, and Georgetown will once again be a hub for visitors and locals alike. A capital we can all enjoy.
Looking forward, looking bright.
Learn more and spread the word.
Support our port, support our tourism.
Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for the 7 a.m. news, brought to you by Cayman National Bank, proudly serving the Cayman Islands since 1974. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs.
There are plenty of reasons to be a Logic customer. There's lightning-fast internet connectivity. There's the great overall customer experience. And now, you can improve your Wi-Fi connectivity with Logic Boost Wi-Fi for free. With Boost, you can extend your freedom to stream, game, and download seamlessly anywhere in your home, like your patio or your underground lair if you have one. Sign up now for any Logic Bundle package and get free Boost Wi-Fi for a limited time. Visit logic.ky for details.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. And thanks so much for joining with us. And if at any point you find my jokes, you say, hey boy, you should really be on stage. There's one that's leaving and you want to buy me a ticket. Well, I understand that. But at the end of the day, if we don't laugh and try to enjoy ourselves, well, only us to blame for that. But thank you in all seriousness for listening, for being attentive, for volunteering and being truly an active, engaged participant in our society, especially when it comes to preparation relative to any sort of disaster. For those individuals in our communities, not just because of their jobs, maybe they're medical personnel, maybe they are working somewhere in the uniformed services, or they're just members of the community who've got involved with the CERTs, those are community emergency response teams. They're beneficial not just in the aftermath of a hurricane, for instance, or in the planning for a national disaster, but just in getting the communities more engaged, learning our neighbours and some of the vulnerabilities in our communities, but also the strengths, the skill sets that exist amongst our neighbours. As an example, sadly, because of the pace at which our lives seem to evolve these days, we may not necessarily know our neighbours. And as a result of that, we probably don't feel connected, no sense of ownership. We don't feel that we no longer have a vested interest other than the properties that we own. But what if we knew our neighbours? Studies indicate, sociologists will probably confirm, that if we are aware of what's going on around us and we know the names and faces and can identify with the people in the places, we probably are going to be more inclined to do better by those people, be more considerate and responsive and responsible and respectful. If so, then the communities are better, safer, healthier, stronger, much more sense of community and camaraderie. Now, think about that to the extent that if you know your neighbours, not only can you borrow with a sense of safety, that cup of sugar, you can go share your mangoes when they're in season. You can bake a bread and carry it across and it'll be received not like in that fairy tale where you come to poison me. But no, I come to literally break bread with you. But what if that neighbour is, good at some carpentry or a little bit of electrical or plumbing and could help you out? And you know that person who will be in your home respectful, take off the shoes, not trouble your dog or your child or otherwise. Those should not be a dream. If our parents enjoyed that, if we lived in a community like that when we were younger, why can we not have that today? It's no excuse to saying, all these people coming here. That is true. But we are here too. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being involved. Thank you for the preparations we do. And let's hopefully that if there is another national disaster like a hurricane or otherwise, that we are prepared, that we're safe, that we can respond, that we can be helpful. Now, in the interim, as we await the opportunity for Dr. Cummings and his team to join us as we talk about stroke awareness, let's have some open line. Invite you to call and share your thoughts with us. Now, I like to make fun. I like to laugh. And I do like chocolate, but laughter, they say, is good medicine. And if I'm healthy, then I don't have to take, the prescribed medicines. But sometimes in our jest, in our jovialness, sometimes people are a lot more sensitive than we recognize, and the joke isn't so much funny to them because they're the butt of the joke. But hey, if you're thin-skinned, maybe a little toughen up would help, but also a little sensitivity on our part with respect to how we say things would equally help as well. So, no offense intended, but if it is, my apologies. And if it isn't, and you're laughing, hey, good for you. 949-8037, 949-6990. Or you can WhatsApp 925-32621. You can call us toll free, 1-800-534-8255. It is a Wednesday. Now, I don't know what your day has been like. Don't even know what your week has been like. Don't even know how your year has been. And for some of us, it's like one day rolls into the next. And I know, honestly, it's been challenging for many of us to different extents. Yet we come and we put a good face and foot forward, and people don't know the wise as to what sort of ordeals, trials and tribulations and challenges that we are facing. But it doesn't mean that we need, even though we're like Atlas with the weight of the world on our shoulders, we don't need to beat up and be grumpy. But it doesn't mean that when we go home sometimes, we sort of kick off our shoes and just, what did it say, Miss Susan? Put on the merino? You still wear it on the shirt, right? Someone this morning said, he hasn't worn his merino for the longest time. I thought, wow, it is not talking about where he keeps his boats. See, little words that sometimes we allow to sort of move from our vernacular. Let's go to our phones though. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Very thankful, sir. And yourself?
I can't complain. Thank you.
Oh man, you're an inspiration. A very positive, realistic person, but very positive.
Just heard you speaking a little bit, your monologue just now.
Yeah, I borrowed it from Johnny Carson.
There you go. I hope you didn't pay too much for it.
It was a free copy, I believe. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're admitting to copyright infringement then?
No, it was... Okay, you got me.
No, but a little bit more serious.
Yes, sir.
You were speaking about disaster preparedness and you don't necessarily have to wait for something to happen. But one of the things that I've been thinking about quite a bit is how to address certain, I don't want to call it shortcomings in the way many of our young people are growing up nowadays, because life has changed so much for them. They're much more oriented towards electronics.
Yes, sir.
It's done a lot. There's a lot of babysitting for them, and they gravitate towards the kind of entertainment, and it kind of stunts their social skills, and it also stunts their motor skills, if you want to call it that. What is your general idea about the idea of national service, especially for people that wouldn't necessarily go on to tertiary education?
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I have said a couple of times, probably even here publicly, that a national service, and that's sort of the reason why I look at these cert teams as potentially being a vehicle by which we could even employ it to some extent. And with respect to you, I would even say not just for those who don't go on to tertiary, it should be for all of us, and starting very early and culminating in maybe a year or two after high school, as it were, for all of us to be able to serve.
Well, quite honestly, personally, I would like to take it a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been dealing with a lot of young people that are coming up through the CIFEC system,
mm-hmm.
right? And they're good young people. Most of them are good young people, like anywhere in the world, and they may not have realized the subjects that they need passes in order to perhaps not go to SciFec, but just go graduate straight out, and end up looking at SciFec as an opportunity to catch up what they may have missed before. You got a lot of stuff going on in your studio, or what?
You can hear that, huh? Yeah. We're shuffling. I think there's some renovations going on, but yeah, we're just transitioning. But I am listening to you because as you were sharing. But with respect to the national service, though, and your reference to the SciFec students now, I'll say this for guidance from you and for others. One, not fully understanding it, and two, only because of my personal ethos. I would not, if it was me and you asked my view, I would not want it to be this thing that is quasi-military or some breeding ground or training ground for any other thing that we may even see in some of the other Caribbean places, but more of a basis for upskilling and discipline and installing a sense of community and civic awareness, but also allowing the students to build a greater sense of unity and connection to our society, ownership, as it were.
And I don't have a problem with that, but I still, you're mentioning the M word there, and it may connotate some visions for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that what we are trying to grow is good citizens, right? You are trying to grow citizens that we will look forward to them taking over the country and running it. And if you compare it to a young Caymanian of yesteryear leaving home to go and work on a ship, away from family and relatives, etc., and you're trying to recreate, and I think it has often been said that the boy is leaving the home and the man is coming back, right? And I think that is something that, in my humble opinion, I would like to see recreated now. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but the one thing is for sure that you need to instill in a young person, you need to instill a set of values, and if they haven't brought them from home, then you have to find a means without an escape of every afternoon to run home and lament the experiences you have to go through for the day. You have to instill a sense of something that will stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not, well, I'm going to do that right now, but after I get home, then I'm going to lay down on the sofa and Mama will look after me. Because that is not the life that the young man or young woman will eventually use to sustain themselves and their family and the community.
But we also haven't had this sort of rite of passage that may have existed with the men specifically as they went to sea. Now, having what you suggest, that form of national service, we live on an island. I still think salt water runs through most of our veins. Maybe we could have a very strong maritime component as well, as opposed to, and it's just me, and I make no bones about it. The money we spend on military and guns, that's a waste in my personal view. But instead of focusing on skilled arms, maybe we can focus on how to tie a knot, how to cook, and maybe how to, put together something a little bit more constructive. But that's just me.
I'm not for 1 minute advocating the training in arms.
No, not at all.
And that sort of thing. No,
you didn't. No.
I am advocating is the training in needle and thread, shoe polishing, ironing shirt, looking after your fellow citizen, and a maritime application is great because there you could have people that learn to rely on one another,
right?
And on the other hand, recognizing that no man is an island.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we all need the assistance of others, and they need our assistance, and that comes right back to what we're talking about, national emergency.
Yes, sir.
And, and that is what I would like to ponder on and see. Yes, I am advocating some...
Yes, sir. Okay, we've... The caller? Okay. Well, I don't know exactly what transpired there, but that caller always makes an invaluable contribution, and I really appreciate it. And he did not in any which way, in case you join us, advocate for sort of military or skilled arms, but this idea of national service. Now, hopefully he'll not take it that we cut him, but you know what? Maybe his phone like mine. It's probably one of those that don't work always. But we're going to pause and take a break. And as scheduled, when we return, the opportunity to speak with Dr. Cummings, going to be talking about stroke awareness. And I didn't bring my pen and paper, so I hope there's no exam. But he has brought along 4 industrious, very intelligent people. As they walked into the room, I got smarter. So when we come back, more talk today.
Get set to get wet at the Flowers 1 Mile Sea Swim on Saturday, June 15th. Be a part of the world's richest open water event with over $100,000 in cash and prizes to be won. 1 in 7 wins. Celebrating 27 years with Swim and Win. Random prizes including smartphones, tablets, airline tickets to London, New York, Rome, Portugal, Dublin, Los Angeles, Brazil, Mexico, Toronto, Montego Bay, and more. No race day registration and limited to 1,000 swimmers. So register online today. Visit flowersseaswim.com for more information. All registration fees will be donated to the Special Olympics Cayman Islands. The 27th Annual Flowers 1 Mile Sea Swim on Saturday, June 15th. Proud sponsors include the Flowers Group, the Department of Tourism, Davenport Development, Cayman Airways, Flow Cayman, and Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture, and Lands.
From happy beginnings to happy ever after.
Brit-K protects your lifestyle with the best insurance cover at the best possible price.
Health insurance with far-reaching benefits.
95% of claims settled in 5 days.
Low-cost life insurance.
And investments.
Security in retirement.
With a custodian pension plan.
For happy beginnings and a happy ever after.
Visit Brit-K.ky or call 949-8699.
Brit-K, where people come first.
The 18th Annual Talent Exposition of the Arts, Sunday, June 30th at the Hockwell Theatre, is brought to you by the New Self-Help Community Foundation. This event is proudly sponsored by Logic, Walkers, NCB Group, Thompson Shipping, Frank Hall Homes, Fashion Mart, Caymanian Times, Dr. Steve Tomlinson, A.L. Thompson's, Rich and Connolly, CUC, Cayman Islands National Credit Bureau, Burger King, Automotive Art, Brown's Esso, Fire Extinguisher Bros, and Radio Cayman. Prepaid tickets for the 2019 Talent Exposition of the Arts at the Hockwell Theatre are available at Funky Tanks and Winner Circle Sports for $10 or $15 at the gate.
Keeping cool in Cayman is essential, but can be costly. Making small adjustments to your household can lead to big savings and help protect the environment. Keep your blinds, curtains, doors, and windows closed when it's hot outside. Using a fan instead of AC will use less power and can cost a mere third of air conditioning. And when using a fan, rotate it anti-clockwise, which will blow the cool air downward, saving even more energy and money. Visit the Ministry of Commerce, Planning, and Infrastructure Facebook page for more tips on alternatives to AC and be an energy advocate.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really grateful for our continuing partnership with our Health Services Authority to be able to, on a very increasing basis, have some discussions in our studio. And I'm grateful that this afternoon Dr. Cummings joins us with, can I say, 4 of your colleagues to ready to take over. I mean, this is succession planning, Dr. Cummings.
Succession planning. Good afternoon,
public.
It's a really pleasure, and thank you for bringing it along and introducing me to your staff. If it's not improper, as we talk about a discussion, I was telling the public we're going to be talking about strokes and the like. Could I respectfully maybe just ask each physician to introduce him or herself? Some of the things will be okay. Dr. Rankin, would we start with you first, or you want me to start with Dr. Calderon? What would you prefer? Start with him? Okay, so we flip the coin and we try to decide who's the most handsome. Dr. Gutierrez, you okay with that? I mean, okay, you won with Dr. Calderon. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for letting us impose on you this afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having all of us here today. I am Dominic Calderon. I have been with the Health Services Authority since 2010, and I'm very, very happy to be part of the organization in the internal medicine department. We do a lot of good work at the Health Services Authority, and we're just thankful that you've given us this opportunity today to talk about stroke.
Well, thank you very much for accepting it, and I guess we do men first and then leave the best for last. Okay, so Dr. Gutierrez.
And hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Gutierrez, and I am one of the registrars in internal medicine at the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority.
Now, Dr. Rankin, I mean, you're like the right-hand man, so it's to you next.
Hello and good afternoon. I am Dr. Tanita Rankin. I'm one of the interns on internal medicine, and I'm very glad to be here as well, so thank you for the invitation.
All right, my pleasure. Good afternoon, Dr. Cartwright. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Hi, my name is Dr. Chelsea Cartwright. I'm also one of the medical interns in internal medicine.
And I hope that you feel comfortable and welcome. And radio to me is like the best. There's nothing better. Radio came on even like super best. A new word today. And Ms. Susan makes life super easy for us. But Dr. Cummings, the notion as we look at the medical profession, hopefully today's discussion will do two things. Get our listening public to be conscious of stroke and stroke awareness so that we're not dismissive and not too much unwilling to go to speak to our physicians when we think we may have an issue, or even when we go and just mention something, even if it's just in passing, I noticed this thing, to be aware of it. But equally, if my parents don't mind me sort of, always imposing on them, as we're talking to our children about potential subjects that they should be taking, potential careers they should explore, to consider the medical profession, whether they're going to be physicians, whether they're going to be radiologists, whether they're going to work in the admin side of things and hiring the physicians and radiologists, to look at the medical profession, because there are two things people would always need, a politician and chocolate. No, just kidding. But Dr. Cummings, thank you so much for bringing us along. And I know we have the news break at 2, but before we go, the idea of a stroke, is it too much of a I guess a light word to say, a stroke? I mean, it sounds, if you're playing golf, it's a good stroke you got there, but not necessarily the same thing, right? So what is a stroke?
Right. Thank you, and good afternoon to the listeners. Thank you for having us, Dwayne, this afternoon. Stroke is a very serious medical condition, and we want to sort of alert the general public as to the seriousness of this event. Mm-hmm. It's an occurrence that can be potentially prevented and treated. But by definition, a stroke is a sudden interruption of the blood supply to the brain. Mm-hmm. And this is evidenced by sudden loss of certain functions, such as the sudden onset of weakness in a limb or limbs, maybe a hand and a leg, for example. There may be sudden onset of abnormality in the speech, in the vision, and other things. So stroke is the sudden onset of a neurological or brain symptoms as a result of the blood supply being impaired. Now, usually we say that there are primarily two types of strokes. There's one in which the vessel blocks, the so-called ischemic strokes. And then there's another type in which the vessel ruptures, the hemorrhagic strokes or the ruptured vessel strokes. The majority of patients who present with strokes, I would say as much as 80%, present with the blocked vessel type. And that my colleagues will talk about later on has to do with the risk factors for strokes. But as much as 80% of all strokes may be caused by the blocked vessel, and a few, 10 to 20%, ruptured vessel.
All right. Now, when we come back from our news, can I ask you, you shared, if I heard you correctly, that it's sudden, but then you said it can be prevented and it can be treated. In English, to me, if something is sudden, it's almost unexpected. So how do you prevent it? How do you treat it? We talk about that later on, and then looking at the idea of the onset of it. Is it reversible? And then some of the consequences. Could we talk about that as well?
Of course.
For those who are listening, we're really grateful for this partnership with the Health Services Authority. We're going to be talking about strokes, and we invite you to be a part of it. There's going to be an exam, but that's tomorrow. So don't worry about today. You just pay attention today. When we come back, we'll talk today.
Radio K-Man. Radio K-Man's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
First Baptist Christian School and Cayman International School take first place in their divisions during the 5th annual Cayman Islands Information Professionals Lira Parchment Battle of the Books. The Battle of the Books challenge requires students in each division to study 10 books from the start of the school year. Then teams of 6 would compete on how much information they have retained from their reading. Almost 140 youngsters competed this year. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. 40 bodies have been pulled from the River Nile in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, following a violent crackdown on pro-democracy protests, opposition activists have said today. Doctors linked to the opposition said the bodies were among 100 people believed killed since security forces attacked a protest camp on Monday. The Queen has paid tribute to the heroism, courage and sacrifice of those who died in the D-Day landings. She was joined by 16 world leaders, including the United States President Donald Trump, in Portsmouth to commemorate the 75th anniversary of history's largest combined land, air and naval operation. And a Texas school district has fired a high school teacher who tweeted to U.S. President Donald Trump to ask for help reporting illegal immigrant students. Georgia Clark, an English teacher in Fort Worth, complained on May 17th about illegal students from Mexico, adding, "I need protection from recrimination." She told school officials that she did not realize the tweets were public. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us. And as we continue the discussion, we're grateful that Dr. Cummings was able to join us as we talk about strokes. And he's brought along 4 of his colleagues, Dr. Rankin, Dr. Gutierrez, Dr. Calderon, and Dr. Cartwright, for joining us. And I do like to laugh and I make a joke, but maybe that's good medicine in a sense. It takes away, if you can't see me, if you just hear me laughing, they may think I'm handsome. I don't know. It's a strategy. But strokes, very, very serious. And as you were sharing the different types, but preventable, treatable. Are they, Dr. Cummings? I mean, if there's a sudden onset, in most instances, how do we correlate the two?
So to clarify this, sudden onset, I would say it's like a bolt out of the blue, in the twinkling of an eye. The person is well now, and a second or two after they're not well. And that's how it presents. Patients are perfectly okay, and they present with this particular deficit or dysfunction in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
We say it's preventable because, and one of my colleagues will share shortly, the risk factors, because there are certain things that will set one up for strokes. And if those things are prevented, then strokes are prevented.
Okay.
In terms of reversible, when we talk of treatment, which we will do towards the end, if a stroke is diagnosed promptly, then we can in fact institute treatment that can prevent many of the side effects, the residual weakness and speech disorders and so on. So to some extent, there's a lot of good treatment now in the last several years as opposed to 10 years ago that can reverse some of the symptoms and effects of stroke. But Dr. Gutierrez will right now speak to us on some of the risk factors so that the audience will get a better understanding the risk factors of a stroke.
Right. So in medicine, usually the physicians like to categorize certain things, the risk factors, and we categorize them into modifiable risk factors and unmodifiable risk factors. Now, what do we mean by that? I'm glad you asked the question. It means identifying the things in a person's life that can potentially be changed in order to reduce the risk for forming or developing a stroke. Now, the modifiable risk factors include hypertension, diabetes, and uncontrolled hypertension and diabetes, smoking, dyslipidemia or uncontrolled blood cholesterol levels, physical inactivity or sedentary lifestyle. Now, those are the modifiable risk factors. The unmodifiable risk factors now include things like age, old age, race and ethnicity. Stroke is much higher in the blacks, more than the whites, and family history and genetic disorders. Now, once these things are identified, we can actually aim to correct or change in order to prevent formation of stroke.
If I may ask, we increasingly hear, either through physicians like yourself, giving public presentations, or even if we read certain things, that certain illnesses, would be the word I use, lifestyle illnesses, that if we do certain things in our lives, we can mitigate, we can actually reverse, we can improve. Quit smoking, exercise, sleep more, get proper sunshine, eat better, different things, even our diabetes. With strokes, I'm hearing some of the things that are modifiable, including some of those same things as well.
Right, exactly. So the thing is that, and Dr. Gutierrez referred to that, so hypertension, for example, and he mentioned it specifically, uncontrolled hypertension. So it's not all persons who are hypertensive. It's the ones that do not control or have their blood pressures controlled. So you want to have your blood pressure controlled. You want to have your blood sugars well controlled. You want to have checks on your cholesterol and have that controlled. You want to be actively in exercise, proper dieting. It's not the same thing as one who eats elevated foods that are elevated in fats and carbohydrates, as opposed to someone who eats a more balanced diet. So all those things are important. And we're saying that those are the things that you can change, the modifiable factors, as he puts it.
Right. If I may ask then, with respect to those modifiable factors, as it were, let's take medication. We go to the physician, she prescribes something to say, well, keep your blood pressure under control, help with this. If we were to equally start exercising properly, eating better, doing some other lifestyle changes, would that assist, Dr. Gutierrez, in maybe reducing the medication, complementing the efficacy of the medication and the like?
Absolutely. Oftentimes we as physicians encourage our patients to comply with their medication, because this certainly will reduce the risk factors and they prevent them from forming a stroke.
Okay. The unmodifiable ones, your family history. God's willing, we'll all age and hopeful, healthfully, and but our ethnicity, I don't know. Some people change different things, but I don't know if we can change that. So those things that we can't change, are there things we can do that may help to mitigate, including the modifiable, sort of lifestyle choices? But are there things that are
right? So for example, aging. As we all get older, the vessels tend to get narrower. You can't really change that. That's part of aging. Don't want to talk about biblical things now, but remember, David, how strong he was to kill a bear and a lion. But then towards the end of his life, he was so weak. You know the story. They had to put a damsel next by him to get warmth. So, times...
Money scripture, huh?
Well...
Treat up a child.
So, aging happens. But I think the point we are making, if you treat your body well, if you exercise, avoid cigarette smoking, avoid eating in excess certain things, control your blood pressure, all those things we talk about, it will impact. In other words, age will just be a number. You can, because we find persons who you might find a 60-year-old who may look like 40.
Ernest Ebanks. I mean, the guy is amazing.
Well, I don't know him, but...
Yeah, trust me, man, you're mistaken for a teenager.
There you are.
But I wanted to interject that comment and ask specifically about the age is a number you shared, right? The idea that we're going to age, these things are going to happen, but if we're active, if we follow the instructions of our physician, we do things properly, don't go there and overnight start exercising and expect to run a marathon or lift 1,000 pounds. But if we have a very active, engaged lifestyle, some resistance training and the like, our seafarers, we see them in the 80s and 90s being very active. Our grandmothers still outside sweeping the sand yard and the like, because they're active now. They may take a half an hour to do what, when they were in their teens, took them 15 minutes, but they can do it relative to the younger person who isn't. Dr. Rankin, as we remain active, we remain, hopefully careful with what we're doing, doesn't mean that we have to be old and decrepit, right? No, it does not, she says. She's 60, no. All right. The warning signs. If we understand the risk factors, are there things that warning signs that we should be ourselves as well as our loved ones or co-workers to be cognizant of?
Absolutely. Knowing the warning signs of a stroke can save a life. There's an easy way to remember the warning signs. So for me, I'm thinking of it as be fast. So BEFAST. Be fast to the warning signs you are seeing. Now, B is for balance. And is there a loss of balance? Do grandma or grandpa have trouble walking? Do they have dizziness? E's are for eyes. So are they having blurred vision? Do they have trouble seeing in one eye or both eyes? F is for face. So you look at the person's face. Does it look uneven? Does it droop to one side? Now, you look at the A for arm. Does it have a sudden weakness in the arm? Is there numbness in one or both arms? Do the arms drift down if they try to hold both arms out? Now, you can look at the S for speech. So like how me and you are speaking now, do they have trouble speaking? Can you comprehend them? Do the speech sound slurred? Because when you have a stroke, the speech will, because their facial drooping, the speech will start to slur a bit. Do you have trouble do you have trouble understanding them, or do they sound confused? Now, if you see they have loss of balance, blurred vision, they're drooping, their speech is slurred, that is your time to act fast, where those are the warning signs of stroke, and you need to call the ambulance. We call 911. We get them immediate help.
All right. Now, with that, the time, we talk about the time. There is a window, and if there is, does it matter if it's an ischemic stroke or otherwise? Dr. Corran?
Absolutely, it does. So, one of the things that we've all been talking about is, one of the things that the cardiologist will always say is time is myocardium. It's the same thing. Same thing with the brain. Yeah. Time is brain cells. So one of the things we want to get across to the public today is the second you see symptoms, don't ignore it. A lot of our male population will say, "Oh, let's sit down and wait. Let's watch this." If you see any of the symptoms that Dr. Rankin just explained, immediately get medical help, because there is a window based on the things that we can do when you present to the hospital. There is a particular window in which we can decide, yes, this is somebody that we can give treatment to reverse some of the effects of the stroke. And that window is about 4.5 hours. So if from the time that the patient has symptoms to the time they get to the hospital, if we can get them in, get them the brain scan, determine what type of stroke we're dealing with, then we can get them the medical attention they need that can reverse some, if not all, of the effects of the stroke. And Dr. Cummings will tell you some very miraculous stories that he's had in the past of patients that he's been able to treat with an acute stroke who've come in with the significant weakness, significant slurred speech, who've been essentially cured of their symptoms.
Wow.
And I think he has sort of outlined well the issue of time is brain. In fact, the literature will tell you that every minute, millions of brain cells die if the blood supply is not restored. So you want to restore the blood supply as quickly as possible. This is why we say, or to suggest to the public, once some of the warning signs, once some of the indicators of a stroke is seen in a relative or anyone, you want to alert 911. We say that because 911 will get ambulance service to your residence or your place of location very quickly. And the EMS staff, they can do things that are useful, that will improve your recovery rate, your survival, etc., better than you can if you were to take a car. So we want you to call the ambulance, the 911. We will send the ambulance. But not only that, part of our protocol is that when that ambulance receives that call, they head to that location, and when they get there, they speak to us in hospital. They talk to the ER physicians. The ER physicians alert the X-ray department for the CT scan. And let me show you how important a stroke is. If we have anything that we plan to do in the machine, the CT machine, for the next 10 or 50 minutes, we put it on hold, because that person is coming in and is getting access to that CT scan as soon as possible. Because why? Time is brain. And so, and the lab is alerted, a number of parts of the hospital are alerted that we got this patient coming in who possibly has a stroke. And everything is geared towards getting that person investigated as quickly as possible and treated equally quickly.
Wow. That's amazing. Right? Now, we're the final break of our segment. When we come back, we talk more about it, including treatment and the like. Really appreciate it. For those who are listeners, we're speaking of strokes. If you have a question, you just want to maybe share a comment. If Ms. Susan is standing by with the phones, 949-8037 or 949-6990. It's the first part of the month, so we may have paid our bills. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Wow, it seems I buy a battery every year.
Oh, for real? You should buy your car battery from Vampman. Their batteries are tough. I have a 3-year warranty on mine.
Oh, I know that trick. I take it back and they charge me a percentage of the price.
Hear me out, bro. Not at Vamp Bobo. You can get a 3-year full warranty, no charge. And if they install it at Vamp, it includes free towing and jumping service. And let me tell you, you will never have to get your hands dirty changing no battery.
Get Motorcraft Max or Plus battery for 20% off when it's installed by the service department at Vamp Motors on Walker's Road. Now that's a deal you can get charged up about. Vamp Motors, keeping you on the road.
Extended through June. Talk Today, the most listened to call-in program in Cayman, airs Monday through Friday, 12:15 till 2:30 p.m. Listeners are encouraged to call in and share their constructive thoughts and ideas on current issues concerning the Cayman Islands and beyond.
Talk Today is proudly brought to you by Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy located in Countryside Shopping Village. Savannah Pharmacy, just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Headlines. With the latest headlines. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Turning to international news.
Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm very, very grateful that we have a chance now to continue a partnership with the Health Services Authority. Dr. Cummings, thanks for coming along, bringing your colleagues with us, and this notion that when we speak of strokes, the idea that time is crucial we want to get it. I appreciate you sort of sharing just before the break that you take this so seriously and so important that it becomes a priority from the time that call is received and the person is being conveyed by ambulance to the HSA. You're standing by, the whole team, everything's mobilized. That's reassuring. What if it's you coming in? You know that's the reception you'll get. From that perspective, though, we have Dr. Cummins, we have Dr. Rankin, Dr. Gutierrez, Dr. Corderon, and Dr. Cartwright joining us. We understand the risk factors. We understand the warning signs. Now, the person has had a stroke. Treatment, and is it different if it's one of those hemorrhagic strokes or if it's an ischemic stroke? Is the treatment the same? Is it different?
Right.
So, yes, the treatment is different. So for the ischemic strokes, we mainly try to, if the person comes in within the window, the 4.5 hour window, we can give them the agent to help break up the clot and provide perfusion to the brain. However, if they're outside of that window, then we would put them on medications to help decrease any further clot formation, so your aspirin. We put them on medications to lower the cholesterol in the blood, and also we also hold the hypertensive medications to try to allow better perfusion to the brain. Whereas with the hemorrhagic strokes, they're mainly managed by the neurosurgeon. So they try to repair the artery that may have ruptured.
Wow.
So very well said by Dr. Cartwright. So I think the point I want to sort of re-emphasize, though, even though we say 4.5 hours, we really want to say 3 hours. We want people to get into us, to the service, and get investigated, and then we can start the treatment before 3 hours. Not everybody we will treat with this clot-busting drug up to 4.5 hours. In other words, the majority of patients, if all is acceptable, meaning the pressures are not too elevated, they didn't have a recent bleed, and some of the contraindications, if they are not there, we can treat almost everybody if they come in within 3 hours. And there are some others we can treat as late as 4.5 hours. After 4.5 hours, and we're talking about the ischemic strokes, we tend not to, then the clot busting, the potent drugs that we use can no longer be used. But there's other things you can do. For some patients, you may have to do what we call, I'm going to use a fancy term, embolectomy. I don't want to use any fancy terms now, but certainly we can go ahead and do where they get through the groin, for example, and get into the vessel, and the clot, they try to pull it out manually.
Sort of similar to when you're doing one for a stent for a heart, except deploying the stent, they pull out the...
Exactly.
Okay.
So they can do that. But again, that's another option that they can use. But Dr. Cartwright did explain and differentiate it well. So the ischemic stroke is one thing, that vessel is blocked, and the hemorrhagic stroke is another thing. The ischemic stroke, we talk about using the clot-busting drug and other things to decrease the blockage. The vessel that is ruptured now is treated differently. And she said by the neurosurgeons, generally, the internal medicine treat that too sometimes. Sometimes. But of course, the ruptured vessel type strokes, there are different types, and we don't want to make this complex.
Right.
Some people bleed in the brain because of very high blood pressure. And I like to sort of give my patients this understanding. If you got a balloon and you keep blowing it and blowing it, and it ruptures.
Yeah.
And so hypertension, high blood pressure, is one of the reasons why people will have the intracerebral bleed, because the pressure is too high and it ruptures.
With that then, when we look at the procedures, sort of, let's say, I use the word invasive, that's not right. We're going to go in through the groin, we're going to do the embolectomy. Available here, we can do that here now.
Right. Right, yes. And Dr. At Hill City, Dr. Ramnish does some of that. He does it. He can actually go through and do the embolectomy in the cases that are required. Yes.
Okay. A patient now who's had a stroke and is on medication, Tegretol, carbamazepine, something, one of those medications. Once you're on medication, like statins for the heart and others, once on it, always on it. Once a lion, always a lion. I mean, is that the case?
Right. And so most of the things that cause persons or those risk factors that we alluded to, they are permanent risk factors. And so the hypertensive patients, and that's a good question, we will see them in the clinic and the pressures are well controlled. Or the persons who have high cholesterol, the cholesterols are well controlled. And I know nobody in Cayman Islands like cholesterol drugs. I don't know why that is so, but I'm sure, right.
Is it only here? I believe so.
But they will ask you, Doc, can I come off of this now?
Yeah.
But the truth is that they are well controlled because they're on the medication. If you take off the medication, then the cholesterol goes up back or the pressure goes up back. That is the issue.
Okay.
So to some extent, once on it, you should really stay in something to keep that down.
Right. And I ask you to guide me so that when I don't misunderstand, certainly I don't misspeak. But I'm thinking that this is where it would be very, very important for the patient and certainly the patient's family as they go to the physician. I think it's always good to have somebody to help to listen with a attentive set of ears. Follow the instructions of the physician and don't just treat yourself. But if you're attending the physician and your question is one, as you're on your medication, would it be advisable every so often, whether that's every year, every 6 months, to have regular sort of blood tests to monitor the levels of medicine? And then two, if you're eating better, exercising, you're doing the things and you're seeing the improvements physically in the person, that potentially you're on 50 milligrams of this, maybe now you're on 40, maybe after 5 years you're on 20, that you could potentially do those two things, regular blood tests, and then as you improve your lifestyle, eat, exercise, and the like, reducing the quantity of medication.
No, well said. Actually, in a sense, good health begets good health. And so once you're healthy, you tend to stay healthy. And so we find that some persons who are hypertensive, you can with time decrease the medications. You can decrease certain medications. There's no question about it. So, but it should be done in an organized fashion and by the healthcare provider.
Right.
It should be done in that manner. But at the end, I think patients must understand, and the public, that strokes, which is what we're talking about, is a very serious condition, but is one that can be prevented. We can't live forever, but it can certainly be prevented. It can be prevented. And so we encourage persons to get the regular checks you talk about, cholesterol, blood pressure, other things, stay on the treatment. And I think with that, we decrease the prevalence of strokes in the community.
Okay. Dr. Cummins, with your sort of guidance, if I could, the notion, and perhaps start with Dr. Cordoran, not only with respect to the notion of stress and stressors in our society. Some of us, joke and say, I strive on stress, I eat stress for breakfast. But what role, if any, that is playing on our lifestyle and what havoc is wreaking on us, right? And then as we sort of close out the discussion and thoughts, but through you, Dr. Cummins, I'll defer to you. Okay.
All right, stress is, I'll take that. Stress is one of the things that, in fact, stress, I like to say it this way, the police have this thing that they call or in fact we say the fight or flight reaction. And when persons are under stress, there's a lot of something called adrenaline that is released in the system. When adrenaline is released in the system, then the pressure goes up.
Okay.
And a lot of bad things happen. So stress in itself can cause a lot of problems with your organs, including hypertension and a number of other things. So stress is not necessarily a good thing. I know stress is there on a regular basis. I always say to people, if you don't want to have stress, well, I won't say it on the air. I can't say that. But stress is always there. But the truth is, try to manage that stress, because stress releases the adrenaline. And adrenaline, look what adrenaline. Adrenaline is that the drug we give when persons get a cardiac arrest. We give that to help to boost the heart, and it makes the heart pump potently and rapidly. So it's a very potent drug. And so you could really send up your pressure and send up a number of things if you keep releasing a lot of adrenaline unnecessarily.
Right. And with that, I was just thinking of a headache, something that someone may have. All of a sudden, they get this, I call it a headache. There's probably more to it than that, and not correlated with the fact that students are now studying for exams, their finals, they're going for an interview, and it may be nothing. Hopefully, and thank God, it's nothing, but we dismiss it. That in itself could be something that, Dr. Rankin, I mean, we shouldn't just be dismissive. Yeah. We're going to come back more and have a test. How about listeners submit an online paper? What do you think, Dr. Cummings?
Well, I'm not going to put them under pressure.
No, man.
They're all my friends out there. I'm not going to put them under pressure.
Even the West Bayers?
West Bayers and Eastenders and Northsiders, and they all are my friends.
Well,
especially the old ladies. I'm not going to test them.
No, that's true. Boy, your patients love you. I want to thank you all very much. If it's okay, could I just invite you, if you so choose, start with Dr. Cartwright, any closing thoughts you may want to share to any of your patients, to listening public with respect to health and wellness and the like, anything you would want to say as you wish. Dr. Cartwright, we'll start with you, Mom.
Well, to close, like we said before, stroke is preventable. So you want to try to modify any risk factors that you may have. Hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol. Try to change your lifestyle, exercise, proper diet and portion control, and also taking your medications if you do have these diseases. You want to be aware of the symptoms. The faster you act, the better the treatment. So you want to be fast, the balance, if there's any vision changes, facial drooping, any weakness in the arms or legs, speech disturbances, and then call 911 as soon as all of these occur.
Thank you very much.
One of the things we really want to get across to the public is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Mm-hmm. In the event that we do control the risk factors and we do end up developing a stroke, as Dr. Carter was saying, time is of the essence. Come to the hospital, let us investigate you, see if that we can give you the treatment that can reverse the effects of the stroke. Stroke is a true medical emergency, and the effects can be lifelong if not treated early.
All right, so don't waste time and take it for a joke. If you wish, Dr. Gutierrez, any thoughts you may want to share with the listeners, sir?
Certainly. So stroke is a true medical emergency. Immediate medical consultation after experiencing symptoms of a stroke may allow treatment that can reverse all the effects of a stroke.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Rankin, your colleagues have been they've covered it. Good to have them have you back.
Yes, it is. But my last thing is that do not dismiss the warning signs, and remember that we as physicians are here to help you. Our goal is to get you better than you were when you came in. So we are always here to help.
Yeah.
So even if you see something, come in, talk about it. Or if you don't feel comfortable, bring your relatives, and everyone will talk about it. We'll see how we can fix it and make you better. So don't dismiss the signs. We are always here to help.
I think a good bit of help is to listen to Talk Today. Right, Dr. Cummings?
Right. I think my colleagues have said it well. There's not much more for me to add. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk, because of time constraints, on issues such as the statistics in terms of strokes. But I will say that I'm looking at some old stats from maybe a year plus ago, and in fact, strokes are the third leading cause of deaths in the U.S. And it's a significant cause not only of mortality or death, but of morbidity. Mm-hmm. For many patients who suffer strokes, a large, maybe 40% of them will remain incapacitated. Some of them are now bedridden. Some of them would be able to walk only with significant difficulty. But it prevents a significant burden upon the family. Imagine now having a family member who's not bedridden. You can no longer leave home as you wish. Somebody has to be that person at all times. We didn't have a chance to touch on that, but the point I'm making is that, as my colleague said, you want to try and deal with all of the risk factors, those things that can cause strokes. Look for the warning signs. Deal with them promptly. We've been here before talking about strokes, but people still have strokes and come a day after.
Wow. Is it that they don't realize it, or they just, it's no big deal, I'm not dead. I'm not trying to be...
Right.
Because we do that. We get a cut, and a week later...
Especially the males out there. Males are naughty sometimes.
That's what I'm saying, we are the men. Yeah, it's...
Yes, because we had a guy who came, he came more than 24 hours after developing the stroke, and I was like, hey man, what's up, man?
Yeah.
You know?
I understand that. I don't necessarily understand why that is, but I hope that,
But usually when they have a wife or somebody around them, they'll get them in there quickly.
So the moral is get married. No, sorry. That may be a risk factor. I don't know.
No, it's not a risk factor.
I just come on. You know what? If I have a job tomorrow, then if I don't, you know why. But I'm hopeful that people would be very mindful of our health, be advocates. And as you shared, when we go to our physicians, the parent can take a child, the child can go, with the parent if that's the case. Spouses go and just listen, because sometimes it can be even the most informed, the most educated. Sometimes when they speak to a physician, we get confused. We just feel a little bit, I don't know, anxious. But thanks very much, Dr. Cummings. Always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And to our listeners, I'm very, very, very grateful for that, great, team of physicians we have at our health services, but within the community generally. And as we continue to extol to our government the importance of investing in our education and health, we see the importance of building a strong, robust community. And for you guys, for your study, for your time, your dedication, I must say, thankfully it's you, because, you're not me. So thank you for doing that. I invite you to enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. To our listeners, go about, be safe, be courteous, and considerate on our roads. Be cautious, because sometimes accidents happen. That's what they call an accident. So don't go looking for it. Until tomorrow, we invite you to come back for more right after the midday news and midday meditation. Susan's going to have something special in store for us. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to bake us a cake. We're going to tell you if it's any good. Until then, be blessed.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
After all that talk, sit back, relax. Easy listening on the way. You're listening.